So this evening, Dr. Fadi will give his presentation. Dr. Fadi is a neurosurgeon, an MD in Damascus before the Syrian crisis. And when I was having our first conversation with him, he was so passionate about education, and he was showing me his education centers. And I asked him, as a neurosurgeon, as a medical practitioner, why are you so dedicated in education? And because medical practice is kind of regarded as a very well-paid, well-regarded profession, whereas education practitioners are people like us, common people. And I asked him why he's a very special person. And he said that being an educator, or someone working in education, is the most effective ways of helping communities, because it's about transforming people's lives, and the satisfaction you get from engaging in education is incomparable to any other thing that you do. And that's the reason why I work in education and I support children. And that was such an inspiring statement from a medical doctor, which actually, boosted my morale as an educational practitioner and a researcher. It was a great thing. So I'm so delighted to have you here in multiple ways.
Hello everybody. Really, I'm so honored and happy to be with you this evening, and really I want to thank Dr. Tajendra for this kind words talking about me and about the Syrian refugees. So just I want to give you some experience from neurosurgical approach now. Maybe I'm so sorry for the picture, because I put myself and my colleague in the past as a doctor, but this is a new approach from neurosurgery approach. So as Dr. Tajendra mentioned, I fled from Syria in 2013 for security issues. You know about the crisis inside Syria. And what pushed me to shift this profession, and the neurosurgeon inside Syria, it's a very good post from social issue and from financial issue. So, but after the 2011, you have to rethink about your future, and you have to rethink about your goal. Just I need to collect the money, or I need to do some service to my community, or this is a key question. I refresh and reset my mindset about it after 2011. So this is what pushed me to rethink about my future and my profession, and in another side about the crisis inside Lebanon, when I saw that more than 1 million. This is who's registered in UNHCR, but there is more than 500,000 refugees not get the UNHCR registration. So we have, and this number of Syrian refugees, it's about more than 25% of the population inside Lebanon. So this is disaster in some way, and in another way that maybe you have to see that more than 300,000 of Syrian children out of school in Lebanon. So this disaster push you, if you walk or see in the field, that you have to work something different. So back to 2011 and the war inside Syria, and what the lesson we learned from the crisis, that you have to learn. This is, in some way, this is the good things we learn after the crisis, and this is to see that maybe we are lucky that we have crisis. And sometimes you consider that, yes, it's sad to see the war inside Syria, but in sometimes you have to learn something related to the most important issue for me, the golden rules, which you have to work in the margins. That means maybe you don't have the capacity in sometimes, or the first time, to work as qualified people, but all maybe the community, maybe international community, hosting community, put the obstacles to your work. But think big, even you start small. This is golden rule for our initiative was. Another issue maybe we face in Lebanon or inside Syria, that's the lack of academic and standardization, and this is the key word we used in our training, our activities or project, that the standardization. And this issue we notice in crisis, the big problem that the community, the standardization of thinking going down, because the adoption with low level of standard, this is big problem. So you can maybe talk about the quality of education, but in crisis you can adapt with low quality of education. You can before the crisis you need high quality of maybe shelter or anything related to your life, but the standard after the crisis coming to be down. This issue coming also to lack of qualified staff, to lack of quality services, and also to the at the end instability. That mean also in Lebanon we have to think that we have three tracks. First one, you have to think back to Syria, even the war not finished or finished. This is unstable issue, and you have to think about maybe resettle in Europe or Canada or America, and this is also instability to be in Lebanon and thinking how we can travel. And the third issue, do the integration methods with the hosting community, and this is also so difficult for us as Syrian because Lebanon in some way it's a part of the crisis inside Syria. This is political issue, but this is the reality. So specific challenge in Lebanon, that in Lebanon, and I told the desk and the group see that in Lebanon just you can work as farmer, as worker, and as cleaner. Just, and it's not allowed to work as teachers, as doctor, as lawyer, any profession not allowed to work. And we consider some issue related to the competition in the labor market. But in another side, this is disaster for our qualified people. So, and after, if you work, you expose yourself maybe to deportation or arrest. And every person, if you want to get the residency or legal status in Lebanon, you have to sign pledge not to work. This is also the bad and challenge we face in Lebanon. Also, we have a problem in Lebanon, that lack of voice, that the qualified people not just not allowed to work, but not allowed to speak, to talk, to maybe address your rights, to involve in all the project related to the Syrian refugee. Maybe you, as a theoretical issue, you consider about quarter of the population, but the decision makers not related to the Syrian refugee at all. This is lack of voice or lack of action also. Another thing that I mentioned about the attractive for qualified people between to stay in Lebanon or fled from Lebanon also. And this is for our community, this is disaster also, that just stay with the community, just the low profile people, with all respect to all the people, but the doctor, the lawyer, just if they have small amount of money and can get the visa, just fled from Lebanon. And this is also this balance between to stay with your community and to go out of Lebanon. This is so important and as a challenge for us. And also the social pressure, as I mentioned, the political approach from Lebanese, it's so difficult that need not to change the demography issue in Lebanon, and so concerned about resettle Syrian refugee in Lebanon. This concern put you in social also pressure as Syrian refugees. Now I want to talk something about if we have good planning and good policy related to that group also C. How we can do good policy as this example for win-win situation in Lebanon. Even we have also this a lot of challenge, but if we thinking as a good people as win-win situation, we have this example. This is for shortage of nursing in Lebanon, and this is the ratio that the lowest rates in nursing around the world in Lebanon. That's mentioned just about for the population. This is 3 for 10,000, and it's about 1 to 2.5 to nurses to doctors. But in the USA, for example, it's for each 3 doctors there is 10 nurses. That this lack and shortage in nursing we can as Syrian refugees cover. This is also kind if we thinking academically and thinking neutrally, we can solve some problem. Not just you are compete the Lebanese labor, so you cannot work in Lebanon. So this is in general an example for our approach how we can begin the start point maybe to win-win situation. So after this challenge, as I mentioned, when I fled from Syria in 2013, I founded with my colleague initiative with MAPS. So lovely to talk about MAPS as initiative, not just as NGO, because initiative we put the 3 keywords for our work. We put community and future and dignity. We doing hopefully we consider that good job in education, but not as MAPS, not just a provider for some services. No, we hope to change the community and put the cross-cutting theme as a future, not just dealing the issue just for present, and even to achieve the dignity. And this is key word for our work. So in MAPS now we have 4 programs, 1 for education, non-formal education. So we have 9 education centers into the camps, enrolled in those centers about 3,500 students in our centers. And I will show you after the presentation of Brian, maybe a short video about those centers. So we have non-formal education in EPL, education program in Lebanon, and we have specific program for creativity and capacity building and innovation. And this is a kind of achieve the dignity for our students. So we have also specific program for to those people or to those students and teachers. Also we have a program for relief and for medical sector. We have in medical sector we have 7 medical projects with more than about 13 patients per month. So back to education. When I mentioned that we need to change the community, so you have to work with children, and this is so important for us. In the same time, you have to work with the teacher, and this is what we hope to do. That and one of the trigger points pushed me also to change my profession when I asked someone to do some renovation for my house, and I asked what you was work inside Syria, and answered me that he had a master in English, but in Lebanon work as painter or something like this in renovation. That we have to work in qualified people and keep the qualification for them. So this is general issue we hope to address in our education centers. So when I do for me or our staff our orientation at the beginning of every year. And this is the fourth year we doing the education in our centers called Hope School or Al-Amal School. That I tell the teachers that you have to think independently, that it's so important to think that we can do, that we believe in the idea, not just Fadi or maybe someone paying the money, or no, we have to believe in idea, in dignity, and in serving our community. And we have to think strategically. That's so important for us. As I mentioned, our school, it's inside the camps. By put caravan inside the camps, and it's approach like mobile school. We don't transfer the school every year. No, we transfer 3 of our centers twice because the security issue. But the methodology and mentality of our school, that this is caravan container, if you know, shipping container, that this is when the students or the teacher thinking that this is my school and I will use this school in my country also in transmission period, when the rebuilding of the education system will happen, I not give up to not educate myself. I will use this caravan in transmission period. This is to think as strategic point. And another issue, how we can do this project as a pilot project and can scale up this project maybe to another area, and also to another area not inside Syria or related to the Syrian refugee. Maybe you have as a teacher in maps to think how you can use this experience in another area of crisis, maybe in Asia, maybe in Africa, maybe in any area with a crisis. So this is the second issue. The third issue, the leadership, that you have to think leadership. I'm thinking that you consider that Syria and refugee content maybe has a lot of crisis. Why are you thinking about the leadership? Because this is achieve the dignity. Because if you want to, our crisis inside Syria not need good people, need elites. So you have to think about how we can product elites, and how we can product, and I mentioned that 100% it's more than enough. Because if you want to change the community, just work deeply and very hard with 100%. So we have to think about the leadership, even for the students, even for the teachers. So we put our title to inspire ourselves and our teacher for this year, that teachers as researchers. And this is a kind of changing the mentality about how we can deliver the training, or how we can doing the education to our students, that you have to be as researchers. And we put maybe outcomes, maybe Brian will talk about it, about our project in training, but in a few words, that it's enough for us to change the mentality at the first year to deal with the crisis as a researcher, not just as copy-paste, then after the lesson, then delete. Just doing this issue. No, we have to deal with issue as researcher, because we are leadership, because also we not need to ask the supervisor that I have this problem. No, thinking how we can, critical thinking, how we can solve this problem. And maps, as I mentioned, we have some keywords in our work. One of them, flexibility. That we are so flexibility to do anything from anyone from our staff. Just give us the purpose and the methods, and we agree to do this issue. That in this methodology you can product elites. So this is in general about our work in maps. And just I need from Brian to talk about the training, and after that I will show you some details with video to show the reality about our project related to the education and formal education and to creativity.
Some of the context there. I want to just cover a little bit of ground before I get into the nature of the training that we've been doing. The context of this is approximately 1.5 million refugees, in addition to the Palestinian refugee community that's already in Lebanon. Just putting that into the broader Lebanese context, that's approximately 25% of the entire population residing within the borders of Lebanon at the moment. So the impact on the national infrastructure is enormous. I mean, just off the scale. There's been a whole range of responses to this. Primarily, we were talking earlier, there's a lot of media coverage around this second shift provision. I'm not going to get into the whys and wherefores and pros and cons of that at the moment. Suffice it to say that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around the nature of that provision. But even with that provision, which is something less than 270 schools for the whole country, for these nearly 500,000 children, there's a question of how much support is actually being targeted. So the latest figures I've got in terms of children seen as in some kind of educational need, and this includes the Lebanese children, is currently running at 1.2 million. These are figures as of the summer. Of that 1.2 million, not even 50% of those children are even being targeted for support. So that not even 50% of the needs that have been identified are even being considered in terms of the planning. Never mind how much of the planning is actually being delivered. Last year, there was quite a well-publicised financing shortfall. So even for that plan for the 550,000 children, they were running in the first quarter at roughly 39% of financing. This year it's 26%. Okay, so the funding is dropping off. Obviously the problem is going nowhere. So into that mix, you have an organisation like MAPS which says, well, we've got literally hundreds of thousands of children receiving nothing. What can we do about it? And the group of doctors, as they were, set about establishing a form of education provision that children and their families would be willing to engage with and would be able to engage with. So he's talked about having these mobile centres, these teaching centres. They are steel containers. Far from ideal, but anything's better than nothing. And these are safe places, these are portable places, which is quite a key issue. So you may have seen regularly reports in the media about entire refugee camps, communities being shifted on. The political landscape in Lebanon is quite interesting. Lebanon has never been a signatory to the United Nations Conventions on Refugees. So that lends a completely different political landscape to the work that this organisation is doing. So in addition to the labour restrictions, there are movement restrictions and more general restrictions on the refugee community that are not the same as the restrictions you might find in Jordan, for example. So you don't have the big agencies setting up substantial tent communities. It's improvised, it's small scale. So into that comes Dr. Fadi and his team. So about 18 months ago now, Tajena and I worked on a program where I was going to do some research as what do we call it, semi-ethnographic. I'm still not entirely sure what that means. So I was kind of embedded with them for a while, doing some training and doing some research at the same time, with a body of teachers who are not allowed to work legally, many of whom have had limited, if any, experience in teaching themselves. Those who were experienced came from the Syrian public system, which itself was not seen as strong in the first place, certainly in terms of pedagogical approaches and teaching methodologies, very, very adrift from what we now know is effective, not just in the Western context, but in terms of kind of broadly generalizable developmental approaches. So, what do you do under those circumstances? With very limited resources, very limited but very willing people, with huge numbers of children, huge numbers of families, very challenging environmental conditions, never mind the political landscape. Well, into that comes an organisation that says we need not just to make some provision, this has got to be incredibly good provision. This is about not just giving children the skills and wherewithal to deal with their situation now, But we talk about this no loss generation, and this is this idea of giving this generation what it needs to rebuild the nation when they go back. So what does that mean for teacher training? Well, my view bluntly is that these children cannot just have well-meaning volunteers. They need teachers, but they don't just need good teachers. They need incredible teachers. They need better than we have here, because the needs are greater than they are here. Now that's actually stating the bleeding obvious, isn't it? But how do you create a body of teachers like that? We have started to do some work on that, and that's been a lot of the focus of my work over the last 18 months or so, working with teachers. There's a lot of, there are universities out there that will say, yeah, so we've got a package that will train all these teachers. And the first time I met the body of teachers collectively, they were quite proud of what had been provided. So they were engaging in conversations about Maslow and Bloom's taxonomy and all this highfalutin stuff, which is completely meaningless in the context in which these people are actually operating. So we try to start with a kind of needs analysis approach, working out with what exactly do these teachers need, because actually the question is really what do the children need. So we've had a program, and the commitment of the teachers to the training is exceptional. They give up every Saturday, for example, to train. So they're engaging in conversations about what is for them radically different pedagogical approaches. Child-centered learning, this is not an educational concept that even the experienced teachers were familiar with. So we've done a lot of work on that. We've done a lot of work on planning. We've done a lot of work on really being secure in what are your objectives and your outcomes in learning. What are your curriculum decisions? This is a context in which when you have a conversation about curriculum, everybody assumes you mean what textbook do you use? That's the level of discussion. And that's not confined to Syria, we know that. That's also very much the case in the Lebanese system. So, how do you give teachers what they need? We have a massive age range in each school year. We have children who have missed not just months, but in many cases years of schooling. We have children arising from very difficult domestic circumstances, not remotely ready for school in many cases. And how do they cope? And we've got children in primary school from age 4 to 14. I think that's our maximum spread at the moment. But of course, they're not necessarily chronologically where you'd expect them to be. They're not developmentally where you'd expect them to be. These are refugee children with their own psychological issues, their own traumas. And the elephant in the room on this is the actual teachers themselves are refugees with their own issues and their own concerns. And that's an advantage and a challenge, of course. We've done a lot of work to get people to this point in their education, in their professional development as teachers. One of the reasons we're here today is we know that there are areas of speciality that we could do with some support in. So for example, we now have a partnership with the Ministry of Education in Lebanon for kindergarten education. But that whole area of early years provision is not something which had previously existed within the Syrian system. And the Lebanese system has at least 3 years of KG and usually some kind of form of preschool as well. So if you're trying to get children to transition into a Lebanese system, it's very difficult to align those two approaches to the number of years you're in school, never mind the way you teach children. We need help with early years provision because even our experienced teachers have not been trained to work with the little ones. And what happens if you teach a lesson to a 4-year-old as though you're teaching it to a 12-year-old? Well, it's not really going to work, is it? And when you try and do that in the context of an 18 square metre metal container in temperatures which can reach 40 degrees in the summer and minus 15 in the winter, there are some challenges. Which is why these need to be exceptional teachers to deal with these challenges. So on an ongoing basis, we're working to train these teachers. We need some support with that. But this idea of teachers as researchers, is about teachers taking ownership of their professional development. This is not about teachers as data collectors. This is about teachers designing research to find out, in these circumstances, what can we do within our limited resources, which is going to have the most impact, the greatest effect on our children. Now, we're at the early days of shaping a relationship on a formal basis with UCL and with the team under Professor Moore. But we need things to happen quite quickly, because we need to learn the lessons of other contexts, but we need to learn the lessons of the Syrian context as it's lived out in Jordan, as it's lived out in Turkey, as it's lived out within the borders of Syria, where people are facing very, very similar challenges with their children. What are they doing that's effective? What are they doing that's most effective for their children? And how should our teacher training reflect that? So Dr. Fadi touched on the size of the organisation as being actually quite an important factor here. So we have 9 teaching centres, not officially allowed to call them schools because that's far too politically sensitive. 3,500 children. It's not small, but it's big enough to be substantial. It's of a size where if we want to make changes, we can make changes quite quickly in the way that bigger organisations can't. Because it's non-formal provision, there are risks associated with that in terms of being under the radar with the ministry. At the moment, our relationship with the minister is very good. Actually, he's very supportive on a personal level. But we're also not constricted by the same pressures of government because we're kind of under the radar, which means we are in a position of more flexibility with curriculum, with more flexibility in terms of teaching approaches. We can turn things around, I would argue, faster than other organisations, which means we can be an incubator for generating a model that works and hopefully is scalable and hopefully is transferable, not just to other areas within what is now the Syrian diaspora, but hopefully one day when people return to Syria. There's no limited education infrastructure that people are returning to, but if there's a model that has been generated with rigorous academic research behind it, then there's something that potentially could be put in place quite quickly, not just as a sticking plaster, but as a way to really actually develop a generation that's going to need to be better equipped in terms of characteristics and qualifications than anyone else. So this curriculum that we're talking about is infused with innovation, with creativity, with critical thinking, in theory. Right? This is new territory. This is hard for the teachers. Teachers who are used to a stand at the front, and yes, all 36 of you will sit and listen to me, even though you're cramped 4 to a desk in 18 square meters. How do we have a child-centered approach there? How do we inculcate group work and collaboration and all these buzzword 21st century skills that actually, if they're done properly, will impact on the rebuilding of an entire nation? What does that mean in real life for these children? And where are they getting the time to explore their creativity, their identity? That was the nature of our conversation earlier today. In a meaningful way, which is going to allow them to develop, which is going to give them voice and agency, which is actually going to give them psychological prevention, psychological self-care, not just for their current situation, but hopefully give them the critical faculty to protect them from those people who will predate on this generation for their own ends. There's a ticking time bomb in so many ways. Right? We're talking about primary education, but maybe we should be talking about youth. The percentage of engagement for secondary school aged children is currently running at 2%. Lots of people don't believe that figure. It has dropped even in the last couple of years. So 2% of the 15 to 18-year-olds are actually engaged in any form of educational provision. Right? These are vulnerable adolescents who could be turned very quickly, and as the Syrian disaster becomes ever more protracted and people start to lose hope, well, there's almost a perfect storm brewing there. Anyway, I have rambled quite a lot there, but there's a lot to say, so thank you for indulging me. We are here to plead for support for a group of people who are incredibly committed not just to giving provision to children, but giving the right provision to children that's going to actually change their lives and change a generation. So if there's expertise in this room that can help us to do that, then we would be delighted to talk to you. Thank you. We've got a bit of a flavour, if you wanted to show the video, of just what the physical space looks like and what is being done with the resources that we've got.
So back to our Hope Center. This is the environment of the center that we have the camps and renting the land and put the caravan in this land and deliver the education. So we have about 55 caravans in 9 centers, and this is inside the class. You can consider something related also, hopefully, to some quality in the crisis. And this is also some keywords we consider that we have to put the quality of anything we deliver to our students. And this is one of the healthcare services we deliver also to our children. This mission, this is a kind of support of human resources. All these doctors coming from the state and from one of university in Lebanon. That we have about in the last before the last mission about 85 doctors coming to our school and do the mission in dental issue. This is what I want to say, that we have to work with quality, not just we are in the crisis, not care about this issue. So we have to work like this issue and maybe uniform. It's a kind of what we are thinking about. This is a kind of, as Prime mentioned, for capacity building that in the last year we delivered for, as I mentioned, we have 170 teachers, all of them Syrian, and this is added value for us. And when we do the capacity building, also we get some scholarship from the university to give this scholarship to the teacher, and doing the scholarship in parallel while they doing the teaching in our school. And this is a kind of how you can measure the benefit from this scholarship directly from the classes. And we hope to achieve this kind of control and evaluation. And we had this morning a big discussion about how we can measure this issue, not just giving the scholarship or the training for the teacher. No, how we can measure the outcomes of this scholarship and training into the classes. So we have a lot of training courses, as Prime mentioned. This is in the last in the Relief Center, and hopefully we can design a new collaboration methods to inspire. Just for this photo, I inspire all the teachers by this photo. You remember that when I asked you that we need photo? Why? Because as I mentioned, the standardization issue in refugee content coming to be down so quickly. But when you talk to your staff that your experience, I talk about your experience in UCL with some expertise, and we prepare some collaboration with the Relief Center. This is so important to the staff that not just thinking that, just thinking about legal issue and just to take the money. No. How we can achieve the dignity that the experiences of the Syrian refugee or the Syrian teacher expose, or you can explain about it in one of the so important place in the world. This is so important for us. Now to the creativity program. This is basically this is our building we have 9 education center and we have 1 building. This building was hospital. So I also checked the hospital from hospital for patient to the school, but also in another kind. This now we will enter to the theater, operation room. So we have many operation room now. This is the first one for something related to the painting, to the art, So we develop our students in like this issue, not just for psychosocial. No, we hope to produce from those students or those youth elites. And in another kind, it's a livelihood project. How we can use these skills or talent to use it to get the money. This is the second issue for design and swinging fashion. This is also for the gender, the girl and the women. And this is so important also for our students, especially for the girl to talk about it. This is the third hall. This is applied science. And this room was in the past when the building was hospital. It was for pregnancy women and to just for delivery. And now, and we shifted to how you can generate the ideas into the applied science. So it's so important when you put in this program. We don't put any teacher in this program. All of our staff in this program are engineering. And this is very good issue that engineering in Lebanon not allowed to work. But we put engineering as a teacher to talk about like this issue, applied science, and we started with the students when the upper fall of the head of Newton, how you can think about gravity and something related to this issue. So it's so important when you bring all the students 1 day per week to those center. We have also some workshop in vocational issue, and we are doing until now some profiling, how you can determine that those students maybe in the future interested in to be in offices or with a human being or to deliver the services. It's a kind of profiling to determine the interesting in the future, and this is so important for the children that and this was a key question when I entered to any class that ask what about your future as children. And at the first of our work, most of children told me that I will be a low-level profile, that maybe in worker in grocery or just holder, because this is the standardization coming down. But now, when we explain more about the professions and explain more about the engineering and the alternative, this is one of our projects that doing by 2 students, how we can solve the problem related to the garbage issue and electricity in Lebanon. Because in Lebanon, they face those 2 problems, that we can burn the rubbish and we can generate electricity from them. And we do the link between any project doing from those students to Syria. That this is the map of Syria, and this is some sign inside Syria. That this is the whole of engine and power. This is engine for the car, and this is for solar system developed by our students. And this is the one of our hall also for the forum. That's so important to. This is a kind of also some training doing from American University in our centers, and this is related also to the certification, which we talk about this issue in maybe our group, that when we deliver these courses from American University, we get the certificate, and this is so important for the youth and the children or anyone enrolled in these courses, that American University mean a lot to those people. So also we have 2 computer labs, and we doing something related to the programming, material design, or graphic design. A lot of things related to this hall. The last things, one of our success story happened with us in 2016 when we got the invitation to the American University in Beirut to participate as a team to competition for robotics. And this was just as psychosocial support for our team, that you can see what Lebanese team doing in this competition and kind of inspire your children. So we participated in this competition with our team from four girls and 4 boys, and the team, its name was Hope of Syria team. And the surprise was that we get the first rank in this competition. But the Lebanese committee get shocked that you are Syrian and the competition should be to the Lebanese people. So we put another team with us to pay the money, because the award was money to the team who get the first rank. So, but after that, it's okay for us. After we get the first rank, we got the invitation to the Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, in the USA. And also we got the...
we talk about heroes. That's not heroes. These are the real heroes. These are the champions. These are our winners right here.
So also we, after that we visited White House and met Mr. Obama and his advice. This is in the White House. This is the consultant of Mr. Obama. So it was a kind of how we can talk about creativity and innovation even we have a crisis. And this was so important to change also the standardization of the mindset of the Syrian refugee. This competition, it's before a few months, we did in also Lebanon. We organized the first competition for the Syrian refugee called Roboji. Robot refugee, the first robot refugee in the world. So we have this competition and participate in this competition about 100 students in Notre Dame University in Beirut. All these students get the train, and those are our students, 100 students in 10 teams. And the added value for this issue that when you see that those students just coming from the camps and still in the camps maybe for 4 years ago, since 4 years just in plastic nylon bags, sorry for that, but this is the reality. And after that coming to be in the university and stand with the professor in mechatronic or engineering, computer science, and explain about the project. This is a kind of how we can create the hope also for those students. And even also, if every activity we look about dignity and high standard of the work. Also we get the 6th grade also in Doha around the Arab world. This was in Doha also from a few months ago. So, and also we have in Kentucky also from few months, and also we participate. The last one was, we have, this is when we visit Canadian mission and Japanese and UK mission in New York, and explain this is for the State Department in Washington. And the last one, we represent not just the Syrian, we represent all the refugees around the world. So in the competition was in Washington DC. So this is what we hope to do in our initiative, how we can achieve a dignity with high quality, with limited resources. And this was so important message we send it to international community and to the donors, that we are, as a Syrian refugee, we can do a lot, but maybe need an access, maybe need limited resources, maybe need just some help, maybe need some support, not need just, and this was so important also for hosting community, that to be honest, we have some tension between the Syrian refugee and hosting community in Lebanon. So that they consider that you are a refugee and you are in low standard, just you have to take care about your relief items or food or some security. No, we have to think that elites. We have to think that Syrian refugee can do a lot with hosting community. So we sent a lot of message. Hopefully we can achieve and give the market by strong point, not just, and this is new maybe approach for market your work, that you can market your work by I am in need, please help me. This is approach, and our approach that we are very strong, but we need some help to be more stronger than the past. this is marketing in strength point, not just as a weakness. So this is our initiative, and thank you so much for your listen. I appreciate it.